Berlin. Friday evening, July 19th, 1940. Inside the Kroll Opera House, the swastika banners hang floor to ceiling, dark red and black in the electric light, dozens of them, covering every wall of the chamber. The hall is full. Generals and admirals in service dress, party officials in uniform, the foreign press crammed into the gallery with notebooks open. Outside, a warm Berlin summer evening, the sky still pale at 8 o'clock. Inside, something close to certainty. On the dais, 12 men sit in new field marshal greatcoats, their batons fresh from the ceremony that opened tonight's session. Beside them, Hermann Göring occupies his chair in flamboyant white. The dress uniform of the Reichsmarschall, the first and only man to hold that rank, a title created this evening for him alone. In the diplomatic gallery, Galeazzo Ciano, Italian foreign minister, watches in civilian clothes with the careful attention of a man who is not entirely sure how the next hour will end. Adolf Hitler has been speaking for nearly 2 hours. The speech has moved through the campaign, Poland, Norway, France, a litany of victories so total that the chamber has responded to each paragraph like a congregation. But now, Hitler approaches his conclusion, and the room goes still. He speaks of England, he speaks of reason. And then, in the silence of 2,000 people not breathing, he says it. In this hour and before this body, I feel myself obliged to make one more appeal to reason to England. One more, not the first. Not a spontaneous gesture. One more, the phrase hanging in the air like an admission that previous appeals went unanswered, wrapped in the conviction that this one will not. The broadcast goes out live across Europe. German observers in the chamber regard the offer as seriously made and expect the possibility that England might accept. The propaganda ministry has already printed a leaflet, the full text of the speech in English, ready to be dropped from aircraft over British cities. They have called it, without apparent irony, a last appeal to reason. 90 minutes later, the speech has barely ended. A broadcaster named Sefton Delmer is sitting in a BBC German service studio. He has received no instructions from any ministry. No government has convened. He simply opens the microphone, speaks in German, and tells the Reich that Britain is hurling the offer right back. In your evil-smelling teeth. In Berlin, the impact is immediate. Goebbels concludes the broadcast must carry official authority. It didn't. It came from one man, acting alone before anyone in Whitehall had convened to discuss the matter. That evening, the first British reactions reached the propaganda ministry in Berlin. The room goes quiet. These men had expected deliberation, the sound of a door, if not opening, at least being tried. What they received was a BBC broadcaster without authorization, closing it in under 2 hours. How does a regime reach this moment, certain of acceptance, unable to model rejection, on the single most consequential question of the entire war? The answer doesn't begin in June 1940. It begins with the ideology that made this kind of mistake not just possible, but inevitable. Adolf Hitler never visited Britain. He knew essentially no English. But he believed, with genuine conviction, that he understood the English, understood them at the level of blood, of race, of something that ran deeper than politics or diplomacy. In Mein Kampf and in his private conversations, across decades of ideological writing and table talk, a picture emerges of Hitler's England, a nation of Germanic stock, builders of an empire stretching across a quarter of the world. Proof that the Aryan race was destined to command. He proclaimed that the English nation will have to be considered the most valuable ally in the world. He reportedly told Albert Speer, on more than one occasion, that the English were his brothers. This was not diplomatic language, it was something closer to theology. Throughout the mid-1930s, the German press ran a sustained series of articles praising British imperial history. Rhodes, Nelson, Cromwell, Wellington, held up as Aryan heroes, proof that the blood that built empire in Britain was the same blood that would build it in the East. The biographies praised British ruthlessness in constructing empire, the apparent lack of moral scruple that turned a small island into the largest power on earth. The message was not subtle. Here was the template. Here was how it was done. The Anglo-German Naval Agreement of 1935, signed without consulting France or Italy, was received in Berlin not as Britain managing a threat, but as Britain beginning, cautiously, to align. The first step toward the partnership Hitler had always imagined. Two master races, one commanding the seas, the other commanding the continent, dividing the world between them. But embedded in the fantasy was a blindness that would prove catastrophic, because Hitler saw Britain as a racial ally, because his entire model of England was built on Aryan self-interest and imperial calculation. He could not construct a mental model of a Britain that would fight for democracy, or for international law, or for the sovereignty of Poland, a Slavic nation he regarded with contempt. Those could not be real motives. They were pretexts, the real England. The England of empire builders and racial pragmatism would eventually see past them. A Swedish businessman named Birger Dalarus, who had worked with Göring in the weeks before the war trying to prevent it, put the matter plainly after the fact. Hitler, he said, was a man whose real knowledge of Britain was nil, not limited knowledge, not incomplete knowledge, nil. The conviction was not analysis, it was projection, and it would outlast every piece of evidence assembled against it. Hitler did not hold this belief in a vacuum. The 1930s filled it with what looked, from Berlin's vantage point, like evidence. March 1936. German troops march into the Rhineland. Britain protests. Nothing follows. 1938. Germany absorbs Austria. More protests. No action. September of that year, Hitler demands the Sudetenland, and British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain flies to Germany, not once, but 3 times, to negotiate the handover personally. Prague is swallowed the following spring. The verbal outrage from London is genuine. The military response is non-existent. From Berlin, the pattern is not ambiguous. It is a lesson, repeated until it becomes certainty. Britain will always find a reason not to fight. Each concession deepens the impression that Britain has quietly, without announcement, decided to leave Germany alone in Europe. In November 1937, Lord Halifax, Lord President of the Council, tall and angular, one arm withered and kept concealed, known in political circles as the Holy Fox for his combination of deep Anglican piety and political calculation, travels to Germany ostensibly for a hunting exhibition. He meets Hitler at Berchtesgaden. They talk for hours. Both men leave believing they have agreed to something. Halifax thinks he has communicated British concern about German methods. Hitler thinks Halifax has signaled implicit British acceptance of German expansion eastward, provided it is managed without triggering a general European war. The same conversation, opposite conclusions. In Berlin, it registers as a tacit green light, a quiet, aristocratic nod from the man who represents the serious, substantial England. That interpretation lodges in Hitler's thinking, and it does not move. What Berlin hears from London passes through a particular set of hands, and those hands belong to the man about to take up his post as German ambassador. Joachim von Ribbentrop arrives in London in August 1936. He is 43, immaculately dressed, erect in a way that suggests performance rather than confidence, with dark eyes that can shift from deference to cold arrogance in a single exchange. His secretary, Reinhard Spitzi, is blunt about the problem. He behaved very stupidly and very pompously, and the British don't like pompous people. Hitler's personal secretary, Traudl Junge, who knows him throughout the war, observes that he seems absent-minded and slightly dreamy. A man who gives the impression he is always elsewhere. He spends 18 months in London. He attends house parties, dinners, and country weekends with the Anglophile right. He cultivates Lord Londonderry, former Secretary of State for Air, a man genuinely convinced that accommodation with Germany is possible, with such persistence that British social circles give Ribbentrop a satirical nickname, the Londonderry Hare. He considers this world the key to Britain. He is gathering intelligence from exactly the people who tell him what his ideology needs to hear. In February 1937, meeting King George VI, Ribbentrop extends his arm in a rigid Nazi salute. The king is walking forward to shake his hand. The gesture nearly knocks him over. It is not just a gaffe, it is an emblem, but the deeper failure is methodological. Ribbentrop has assembled a picture of Britain built from the aristocratic margin. Men who want Europe managed rather than contested, who fear communism more than they fear National Socialism, who send back a portrait of British sentiment that is, at best, a fragment of the whole. Those people exist. Their views are real, but they are not the England that will decide whether Britain fights. By late 1937, even Ribbentrop begins to sense this. Power in Britain, he realizes, belatedly, bitterly, does not lie with the aristocracy. The realization does not produce wisdom, it produces its opposite. On January 2, 1938, he presents Hitler with a lengthy document. Its central claim is explicit and unambiguous. England is our most dangerous enemy. He recommends abandoning the idea of an Anglo-German alliance entirely and replacing it with a three-way pact of Germany, Japan, and Italy, aimed at destroying the British Empire. The man sent to London to build the alliance declares the alliance impossible and the partner existential. He swings from failed Anglophile to committed Anglophobe, carrying in both directions a distorted picture of what Britain actually is. When he becomes foreign minister 6 weeks later, he brings that picture with him. It becomes the institutional picture. This is the Ribbentrop paradox. The man with the most direct experience of Britain has produced the least reliable analysis of it. He spent 18 months in the country and understood it so little that he nearly knocked over its king. His wrongness carries institutional authority because it comes wrapped in the appearance of first-hand knowledge. When Churchill becomes Prime Minister in May 1940, Ribbentrop's framework for understanding British politics will have no category for what is happening. September 3, 1939. The British declaration of war arrives in Berlin at 11 o'clock in the morning. Hitler had not wanted this. The war he envisioned was in the East. The West was supposed to be managed, not fought. The declaration wrong-foots him, and he knows it. The 7-month stillness of the phony war is partly strategic, partly logistical, and partly the pause of a man who still believes the error can be corrected. On October 6th, fresh from a victory tour of ruined Warsaw, Hitler stands in the Kroll Opera House and offers peace to Britain and France. The speech runs nearly 90 minutes. After the accounting of Poland's conquest comes the olive branch, a call for a conference, an appeal to reason, an extended hand. William Shirer, the American correspondent watching from the press gallery, describes the experience as like listening to an old gramophone record being played for the 5th or 6th time. The British and French governments reject the offer formally. In Berlin, this is processed not as evidence that Britain is serious, but as evidence that Churchill's faction, the warmongering minority, has temporarily prevailed over the voices of reason. Temporarily. The word is doing enormous work. It allows Berlin to receive every British refusal, not as a definitive answer, but as a momentary political condition. It is the mechanism that lets the model survive, contact with reality. The real England, the rational England, is still out there. They are waiting for it. May 10th, 1940. Germany strikes through the Ardennes. The French had believed the dense forests would protect their right flank. They were wrong. Within a week, German armor reaches the Channel. The French army is cut apart. The British Expeditionary Force is pushed toward the sea. Within 3 weeks, only Dunkirk remains outside German hands. France, the nation that had bled Germany white in the last war, the country with the largest army in Western Europe, broken in 6 weeks. For Berlin, this seems to settle every argument. There is no rational basis for Britain to continue. An island nation without a continental army, its great allies shattered, its troops on a beach. Hitler discusses peace terms with his generals. The war in the West, they are told, is essentially over. Britain will seek terms. What Berlin does not know, cannot know, is that at this precise moment, the question they are asking is being answered in real time in a committee room in Whitehall. And the answer is not what they imagine. The war cabinet crisis runs from May 26th to 28th. Halifax, the foreign secretary, the man Berlin has identified as the genuine voice of British reason, has been arguing for 3 days that Britain should seek terms through Mussolini, who has not yet entered the war. His case is coherent. France has fallen. The army is on the beach at Dunkirk. A negotiated settlement, Halifax argues, might preserve the empire at an acceptable cost, and a Britain that failed to seek terms now, while it still had something to bargain with, would have nothing left to offer later. His position is not cowardice. It is a statesman's argument from within a tradition of British diplomacy that had managed dangerous adversaries through patient calculation for centuries. And while this argument plays out in a room in Whitehall, Berlin has no idea it is happening. On May 20th, 6 days before the cabinet crisis peaks, Halifax secretly asks a Swedish businessman to make contact with Göring to open a channel. The Foreign Secretary of Great Britain is reaching toward the German leadership. The back channel is real, documented, genuine. For a few days in late May 1940, the real England that Berlin has been searching for since the 1930s, the pragmatic England willing to come to terms, is briefly, actually operative. Berlin has no idea. The German intelligence apparatus has almost no working agents in Britain. The handful sent across the Channel have either given themselves up, been captured, or died. The picture of Britain that German planners hold is built on empty air and pre-war assumption. The aristocratic contacts, the Anglophile interlocutors, the men from Ribbentrop's London circuit who confirmed the narrative because the narrative was what they wanted to hear. The most consequential political negotiation of the summer is invisible to Berlin. They are within reach of what they want and cannot see it. On May 28th, Churchill takes the argument outside the War Cabinet. He calls roughly 25 outer cabinet ministers into a room and puts the question to them directly. His argument is not rhetorical, but strategic. A Britain that negotiates from weakness will receive no better terms than a Britain that fights. The only thing keeping American interest alive is British resistance. Any approach to Hitler signals that Britain is looking for a way out. And once that signal is sent, it cannot be unsent. According to Hugh Dalton, who was present, Churchill tells the room that if Britain's Long Island story must end, let it end only when each one of us lies choking in his own blood upon the ground. The room cheers. Halifax, isolated, backs down. The question is settled. Berlin hears none of this. What they observe is only that Britain has not yet sought peace. What they conclude is that this remains temporary. The halt order outside Dunkirk on May 24th is among the most debated decisions of the war. The precise reasons involve exhausted armor, difficult terrain, Göring's insistence that the Luftwaffe finish the job. Accounts after the war suggest Hitler may not have been sorry to see the British army escape. That a humiliated but surviving Britain would be more willing to negotiate than a Britain with its army destroyed. That claim belongs to tradition rather than documented fact. But the peace expectation was operative, and the halt order occurred within it. The result is a single number. German planners estimate at best 45,000 British troops might be evacuated from Dunkirk. Between May 27th and June 4th, 338,000 Allied soldiers come home. Britain leaves its equipment on the beach. Guns, vehicles, the full inventory of a modern army, abandoned in the French sand. But it brings back its soldiers. The army survives. And that gap, 45,000 expected, 338,000 actual, is not just a number. It is the distance between the Britain Berlin imagined and the Britain that exists. An intelligence apparatus so broken that it could not come within a factor of 7 on the simplest empirical question of the summer. After the war, it would be discovered that every agent Germany had sent to Britain had either given themselves up, been captured, or died. The picture of Britain on which all of Berlin's planning rested had been constructed from almost nothing. What filled the vacuum were the pre-war assumptions built on Ribbentrop's house party circuit and Hitler's racial fantasy, and 10 years of watching Britain retreat. July 19th, 1940. The Kroll Opera House. The same room. But the meaning of it has changed. The 12 field marshals in their new greatcoats are celebrating a victory built on an assumption already tested and found worthless. Göring presides in his white Reichsmarschall uniform over a ceremony whose entire logic depends on Britain behaving as Berlin has always predicted. Ciano watches from the diplomatic gallery, quietly worried that the British might accept and complicate Italy's position. But Ribbentrop, according to Ciano's diary, is against Hitler making the speech at all. Not because he thinks it will fail, because he fears it might succeed, that Britain might seize on it as a pretext to begin negotiations, which would slow Mussolini's entry into the war. Even those who oppose the offer assume it might work. The entire German leadership, from those who want it made to those who don't, is operating on the same false premise. Then the 90-minute rejection. Sefton Delmer on the BBC without authorization. In Berlin, Goebbels concludes the broadcast must carry official authority. It didn't. The formal British response comes on July 22nd. The man who delivers it is Lord Halifax, the same man who spent the previous 2 months trying to reach Göring through a Swedish businessman who argued for 3 days in a cabinet room that Britain should seek terms. That man delivers the no. Even Halifax, in the end, said no. In London, the street mood is recorded in mass observation diaries, defiant, grimly amused, and wholly unsurprised. Nobody in the queue at the fish and chip shop thinks Britain is about to make peace. The disconnect between how Londoners feel and how Berlin assumes they feel is total. That evening, as the first British reactions reach Berlin, a sense of ill-concealed disappointment spreads through the German leadership. These men had built a picture of Britain over years, through ideology, through diplomacy, through the house parties and the memoranda and the theories. They had been certain the picture was accurate. They are only now beginning to understand what they were actually looking at. Operation Sea Lion is planned that summer, but the men planning it know what they are working with. The Royal Navy controls the Channel. The RAF is damaged but intact. The German Navy is blunt about the risk. Without air superiority, an amphibious assault is extremely hazardous. The plan is real, but it is the plan of men who still hope not to use it. A contingency for a peace that hasn't come. The Battle of Britain begins in August. The Luftwaffe's intelligence on the RAF is built on the same architecture that produced every other German assessment of Britain. Distorted, overconfident, missing the crucial elements. The radar network is assumed to be rigid and inflexible. Fighter Command's reserves are believed to be near exhaustion. The target lists are wrong. Sea Lion is postponed indefinitely on September 17th, 1940. The peace that Berlin was certain was coming has not arrived. And then the Blitz. Through autumn and winter and into the following spring, German bombers hammer British cities. London, Coventry, Liverpool, Bristol. 45,000 British civilians killed between September 1940 and May 1941. Bombing a population into seeking negotiation is not the strategy of a regime that understands its adversary. It is the strategy of a regime that has run out of other ideas and still cannot accept the answer it has been given. In May 1941, the delusion makes its most spectacular human appearance. Rudolf Hess is 47 years old, Hitler's deputy since 1933, a man of absolute conviction and almost complete literal-mindedness, heavy brows, an intense expression that those who knew him described as the face of a true believer. On the night of May 10th, he flies solo from Bavaria, crosses the North Sea, and parachutes into Scotland. He has come looking for the Duke of Hamilton. Through the Duke, he believes, he can reach the British establishment, the aristocratic network, the serious men behind Churchill's warmonger facade, and open a channel for peace that he is certain Britain secretly wants. He is still operating on the 1930s picture. The picture Ribbentrop built from the country house circuit, reinforced by every appeasement concession, carried through 2 years of war without revision. Churchill sees no purpose in publicizing what has happened. No announcement is made. The Germans are left to manage their own embarrassment. Hess is arrested. No negotiations follow. He is not a lone eccentric. His flight is the logic of an entire institutional conviction carried to its natural conclusion by the one man sincere enough, or determined enough, to act on it. Nearly a full year after the fall of France, after the Battle of Britain, after the Blitz, Hitler's own deputy is still searching for the England that Berlin has been imagining since the 1930s. June 22nd, 1941. Operation Barbarossa. The invasion of the Soviet Union begins before dawn along a front stretching from the Baltic to the Black Sea. Hitler had always intended to go east. The Lebensraum, the destruction of Bolshevism, the racial war in the Slavic territories. This was the plan since the 1920s. But the plan had always assumed that Britain would be neutralized first. By agreement, not by conquest. The island empire, the racial partner, quietly managed out of the war before Germany turned to its true enemy in the east. Britain is still fighting. It has been fighting for more than a year. The Battle of Britain is over. The peace offer has been rejected, publicly and with apparent ease. The BEF has been evacuated, re-equipped, and is garrisoning an island that shows no sign of seeking terms. And Hitler launches Barbarossa anyway. He creates the two-front war that German strategic doctrine had identified, since before the last war, as the condition most likely to destroy Germany. And he does it on the assumption that one of the two fronts is not truly active, that Britain's resistance is a temporary condition, that the rational men will eventually prevail in London, that the deal will come, that the real England is still out there waiting. He had been wrong about that assumption since 1939. He acts on it anyway. The miscalculation about Britain was not a rogue estimate or a single bad gamble. It was baked into the system at every level, into the ideology that made certain knowledge structurally impossible to acquire, into the diplomatic appointments that guaranteed the wrong picture would come back from London, into the intelligence architecture that had collapsed before the war began, into the echo chamber of a dictatorship where no one pressed the counter case effectively, and into the profound personal novelty of Churchill himself, a politician for whom Berlin's ideological framework had no category. Every layer of the failure confirmed the one beneath it. The fantasy was self-sealing. This was the crack in the foundation on which everything else collapsed. Rudolf Hess remained in British custody through the war. He was tried at Nuremberg in 1946 and sentenced to life imprisonment. One by one, as the years passed, the other prisoners of Spandau were released or died. The facility emptied around him. He became the last prisoner in a building maintained at considerable expense by 4 nations for a single old man in a cell. He died there on August 17, 1987. He was 93 years old. He had been a prisoner for 46 years, longer than many of the soldiers who fought the war had lived. He was the last man who went looking for the England that Berlin had imagined, the England that was going to be reasonable, the England that was going to recognize its racial kin, see past the war-mongering pretexts and come to terms. The England he was searching for was never there.